Okay, so yesterday we were talking and we were kind of presenting some big ideas and some big thoughts, right? We were looking at this idea of life and how challenging it can be. And obviously, more so than ever with this outbreak, this pandemic that we're all facing, and so many unknowns and so many challenges. But we were kind of in this thought that, like, why, if God's giving us all these great promises, if we're reading like what we see in Scripture that could be so awesome for our lives, the Jeremiah 29:11s and these different great places where God tells us all the good things that are coming, like, and we hear about this life and life to the full that could be, like, why is life so hard? Like, why is he allowing all of this stuff? And it's that question and that tension that we're really sitting in as we kind of narrow our scope down to this one idea that in the end, everything is about God and what he's doing, not necessarily about me and what I want. So today what I want to do with our time together is just recap where we've been and think about what's been going on and kind of reviewing this imagery that we're using of baseball and kind of seeing how it helps us in life as we kind of intentionally move our way through life to develop the kind of depth we need to be the kind of disciples of Christ that we read about in Scripture. So if you think about where we've been, it started with Ken opening up the series, and he did an amazing job of just sharing his heart and letting us know where things were at and leading us into the difficulties of life through looking at some personal experiences that he's walked through in ministry. And then last week, I was able to or 2 weeks ago, I was able to introduce the idea of home plate and where we kind of start in this game of baseball. Remember, the game is played intentionally. It's why it's so frustrating to young people today. It's too slow, right? We got to run from home to first, to second, to third, and back to home again. And 2 weeks ago, I had the opportunity to talk to you guys about home plate. And for us in this game of life that we're talking about, in this imagery we're using for baseball, we start and end at home. Well, for us as Christians and for people, we start and end with God. Everything starts and ends with him. Home plate has everything to do with your relationship with him. And that has to be right before we can move on and start running the bases that we call life. We looked at a couple scriptures that Sunday. The first was Colossians 1:15-20, where Paul says, we look at this sun and see God's original purpose in everything created. For everything, absolutely everything, above and below, visible and invisible, rank after rank after rank of angels, everything got started in him and finds its purpose in him. He was there before any of it came into existence and holds it all together right up to this moment. And when it comes to the church, he organizes and holds it together like a head does a body. He was supreme in the beginning and leading the resurrection parade. He is supreme in the end. From beginning to end, he's there, towering far above everything and everyone. See, Paul's letting us know very clearly that everything, absolutely everything, starts with God and gets its purpose from God, the creator and orchestrator of all things. Everything centers on him. And it's leading us towards something, right? Jesus talks this way. I bring up John 15 all the time, right? We talk about studying and looking at the idea of Jesus saying that he's the vine, and we bring this up a lot, right? Jesus says this in John 15:5, I am the vine, you're the branches. If a man remains in me and I in him, he will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. Apart from God, we can do nothing. And it's something that we learn when we start investing and engaging God. It's something we learn at home plate, that we discover this reality. And this is the truth that we all have to get to a place where we can accept in our lives. That life is about God and what he's doing, not necessarily about me and what I want. Let me say it again. Life is about God and what he's doing, not necessarily about you and what you want. So I want you to understand that. And we got to get to a place where we can accept that. And until we accept that truth as reality, until we walk in that statement and live that out, life will be harder than it needs to be. Life will continue to be frustrating. Challenges will hit and we'll wonder what is going on. Nothing will make sense if everything's about you. And by the way, good luck trying to control it too, right? Because, controlling things you can't control goes really well for us in our lives. Life will never make sense until you understand that this is God's story unfolding before us, not necessarily ours. Life is about God and what he is doing, not about you and what you want. See, at home plate, we learn that we need to make this decision to trust and surrender to God's will for our lives. It's when we can trust and get in sync with what God's doing in our lives that we have an opportunity to find peace and rest and life to the full, right? That life we talk about all the time as we walk through this crazy and wild ride that we call life here on this earth. And we can find it all as we surrender and trust God. That's kind of the tension that I think we all face. Will we trust God, or will we keep trying to do life our way and keep trying to control things that we just can't control? See, that's where it starts, at home. And once we have home plate right, we can move to first base. Once our inner world, our relationship with God is right, we move to first base where we can start working on our inner worlds and our own personal character. This is a really big step as we're running the bases that we call life. And it's where we learn to make right decisions as God defines them, right? That's what character is. It's me making right decisions as God defines what is right, no matter what the cost is in that, right? We must learn to develop strong character, to have the kind of depth needed to take on life and to achieve things in life that actually last. And Ken did a great job talking to us last week about that. And he was really kind of pushing in on a specific area that really stood out to me. And it was something I wanted to come right back to this week. This really struck me. Do you remember he was kind of building into this idea that one of the biggest challenges that he faces is trying to get Christians to believe what the scriptures say to be true? To actually believe those things is one of the mountains that Ken's saying that we climb as in ministry. And I think this was a really big deal, and it was something that really stood out to me. Because if these scriptures are true, then we would live differently, right? Check out just a few of the scriptures that he was sharing with us last week. Romans 2:24, God did it for us. Out of sheer generosity, he put us in right standing with himself, a pure gift. He got us out of the mess we're in and restored us to where he always wanted us to be. And he did it by means of Jesus Christ. Colossians 1:22, he, Jesus, has done this through his death on the cross in his own human body. As a result, he has brought you into the very presence of God. And you are holy and blameless as you stand before him without a single fault. 2 Corinthians 5:21, God made him who had no sin to be sin for us so that in him we might become the very righteousness of God. Can I ask you something? And I think this was the big question that Ken really pushed in on that week when he was talking about character at first base. You know, how would you live every day of your life, even in the middle of this pandemic, right? If you believe those words to be true, that you are holy and blameless because of what Jesus did for you, that God is with you, wouldn't you have a different level of courage in your life? And the follow-up question that he gave was brilliant. He said, how would you live every day if life didn't work out the way you wanted? Like, would you still have faith that would give you this ferocious courage that we read about in Scripture? See, these are big questions. And they might be even more important questions than ever as we walk through all the things that we're walking through right now in our country and in this culture, and as we try to figure out how to make sense and move forward with each day in the middle of this COVID-19 thing that we're in. And we need to see this. We've been building really intentionally. And I wanted to go back a little bit. And tomorrow we're going to move forward towards second base. But we need to see that it all starts and it ends with God at home plate, our relationship with God. When that's right, we can now run to first and we can find character so that we can make the kind of decisions that are right by God, no matter the cost, and so that we can build into our lives in a way that we have the depth needed to move through and navigate this difficult life with God in it. Once we have the character part down, well, now we can run to second base, which we'll talk about tomorrow, and start getting into this idea of investing into people and relationships and community.